The floor is yours.
All right. Let me get these slides spun up here in a second. All right, slides showing up good on your end?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I guess evening over here on the East Coast already. I'm Lieutenant Alex Porter. I'm the Southwest Diversity Outreach Officer at West Point Admissions, and I'm here to give a little presentation about the U.S. Military Academy, what we do here, what it has to offer, and our application process. There's some background on me. I graduated from West Point in 2017, commissioned into Air Defense Artillery, deployed to Afghanistan, and then this is my latest assignment since I moved back to West Point over the summer. Originally from Maryland, grew up with a brother who went to the Naval Academy, so I know a little bit about Navy too, and I ended up deciding when I was applying in high school that West Point was the right choice for me, and I'm really happy with the decision since then. So just to get into this, like I said, we're going to have a little informational briefing tonight on our admissions process. We're going to start off talking about what the West Point experience is about, what West Point has to offer, a little background on the military academy, talk about what life is like as a cadet, and then go into the specifics of the application process at the end. So West Point, you can read the description here, but bottom line, we're about developing leaders of character. That's a phrase that you'll hear a lot around West Point admissions, some of the other service academies too, leaders of character. So we want to graduate people from here who don't just have a degree and nothing else, but they're ready to go into that leadership position in the military, and then have not just the title and the rank to be in charge of soldiers, but also having the moral and ethical foundation to really be the leaders that the Army and the country and the world need them to be. It's also about a lifetime of service to the nation, whether that means staying in the military for a career and retiring after 20, 30 years at active duty in the military, or going on to other things in government, civilian business sector, corporate world, academia, nonprofits, whatever it is. West Point graduates go on to be leaders for their country no matter where they go in life from their military career. And West Point's about challenging you. It's about being challenged academically, physically, militarily, and being pushed to discover what your new limits are. So it is not an easy curriculum to make it through. We've got heavy course loads each semester, busy schedules with military training, physical training, leadership responsibilities, and all of that. But it's designed to make you feel that pressure and feel overwhelmed so that you can learn what your limits are and be able to handle the pressures that you'll face afterwards. I can say that even in Afghanistan being deployed a couple of years ago, I think that I was never as stressed there as I was at West Point, and that's by design. The curriculum at West Point is supposed to be challenging so that whatever obstacles you face in the future from there, it's something that looks easy from then on, and you've got whatever life throws at you from there. So West Point, what it has to offer, biggest thing up front is that West Point offers all of its graduates a fully funded bachelor's degree in the major of their choice. So that means that there's no tuition to pay as a West Point cadet. You receive money for all of your books, no room and board. You're getting medical and dental insurance as an active duty member of the military the entire time. So it's an education that we value at around $300,000 for the total value of the 4 years that's being provided to you at no financial cost. Besides just being free, which is a great benefit, of course, West Point also offers a world-renowned leader development experience here. So we're consistently ranked among the top colleges in the United States. Some of the rankings you down there: #2 best public liberal arts college, #3 civil engineering program. Really the number that we're most proud of on here is #1 most successful professors. So at West Point, all of our class sizes are usually between 15 to 18 people. So that's the high end is 18 people in the classroom. That means you get to actually spend time engaging with your professors, getting to know them one-on-one, getting individual attention and instruction in the classroom. And that's really a great benefit of going here instead of to another school. You might be in a giant lecture hall, one face out of 100 sitting in the room. And finally, West Point offers the opportunity to lead soldiers when you graduate from here. So each West Point graduate also receives a commission to serve as an officer in the United States Army. The same day that you walk across the stage and get your diploma, you also take the oath of office and receive your commission to be an active duty Army officer. That means there's 100% job placement into your career path as soon as you graduate. No having to hunt for a job. You're starting off in a really good leadership position in charge of 30 to 40 people as soon as you graduate, with great pay and benefits, and just really good experiences for someone coming straight out of college. Speaking of the opportunities that are available in the Army, we've got listed here the different branches that we offer to cadets. So branches are the job specialties in the military that West Point cadets can go into after they graduate. In white, we have the ones that are available immediately from the time that you graduate from West Point. So we have kind of the typical military things you might think of: armor, driving tanks around, infantry, field artillery, shooting cannons, aviation, flying helicopters. There's also a wide variety of other positions in the support branches, things like adjutant general doing human resources, our logistics branches, ordnance, quartermaster, and transportation, that give people a lot of great experience. They go on to civilian logistics management careers as well. Information technology side and the signal corps and cyber branches. We also have the medical corps, where 2% of each graduating class from West Point is allowed to go straight into medical school the day they graduate. So for more free school paid for by the government, going to the medical school of your choice where you can get accepted to, and starting off a career as an Army doctor. After a couple of years of active duty time as well, those jobs in yellow open up too. Things like special forces, civil affairs, JAG Corps, being a military attorney, and some functional areas with jobs like working in U.S. embassies. So those opportunities will open up after a couple of years of active duty service. A little bit of background on the history of West Point. It was established in 1802 under President Jefferson. Congress and the president recognized the need to have an active duty regular Army Corps of officers with the educational background and training that they needed to be successful early on in the nation. So West Point was founded as the first military academy. It was also the first engineering school in the United States when it was founded. From there, in 1817, Colonel Sylvanus Thayer is regarded as the father of the military academy. He's who established the initial curriculum at West Point and went on to be the model for the U.S. Naval Academy that was founded in 1845 and the Air Force Academy, founded in 1954. Even if you look at the Air Force Academy's history, a lot of its early superintendents were West Point graduates before the Air Force was its own independent branch. It was the Air Force Academy and the Air Force branch were being run by West Pointers. We talked about leaders of character and service to the nation, and that can take many forms, as you can see here. So we've got people like President Grant, President Eisenhower, General MacArthur, all of these famous names you might have seen in textbooks before, military leaders and presidents, but there's also a wide variety of other people like A.J. Villanueva playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was an Army Ranger. Buzz Aldrin on the first mission to the moon, along with Michael Collins, another West Point graduate. Coach K at Duke graduated from West Point, field artillery officer. Alex Gorski, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And then the Surgeon General of the Army, General West as well, was a West Point graduate who went into a career staying in the military, but still going outside of the regular branches into a medical specialty. So a lot of different experiences you can have here. Staying in the Army and beyond. And so the way that we develop these leaders of character through these 4 pillars that are listed out here: academic, physical, military, and character. And we're going to talk about these a little bit more in these upcoming slides. So on the academic side, like I said, small classroom sizes, 15 to 18 people, sometimes even smaller than that. I had classes where there were only 12 of us in a class senior year. Faculty are all experts in their fields, and they come from a wide variety of backgrounds. So we've got 30% or so are civilian professors who might have come from teaching at another university around the country. 20% are permanently assigned Army officers, people who have been in the Army for probably 20 years or so at that point, and their job for the rest of their career is being a professor at West Point. And then finally, 50% are rotating Army officers coming in for 2 or 3 year assignments who have come from just getting their master's or PhD and take a course to become certified to teach at West Point as well, and are now rotating professors. They really get to bring in that mix of experience of just coming from the operational Army, where they know a little bit about what is going on at the Army bases around the country and around the world, combined with those more senior officers who are permanently stationed in West Point and the civilian perspective as well. And students here go on to a lot of great scholarship programs as well. You can see listed, we've got Rhodes Scholars, Marshall, Fulbright, Truman, all these scholarship programs, and we're in pretty good company for the schools that have produced the most Rhodes and Marshall Scholars of all time, in the top 10, along with schools like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Brown, Princeton. So pretty good academic company to be in there. There are 36 different majors offered at West Point. Originally, like I said, West Point was founded as an engineering school. However, it's expanded over the centuries since then to have a full variety of majors here. If you look through the list, you'll see we've got a mix of things like computer science, chemistry, civil engineering, English, political science, economics, foreign languages, geography, psychology. So whatever subject is you're interested in studying, there's some kind of major here for you. It's not just for the STEM people. We've got a few academic minors that are offered as well. Going into the schedule here, this just gives you a brief overview of what the cadet schedule looks like for the 4 years. So using our West Point terminology here, you've got plebe, yearling, cowan, firstie. Those are our terms for freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. And if you want, we can talk about the history behind those as well at the end. But you see generally starting off plebe and yearling year, it's a lot of core classes with our liberal arts curriculum. Everybody, no matter what they're majoring in, is still taking a core curriculum of classes like history, English, chemistry, math, philosophy. And then from there, they're getting more into their major courses and electives over the years. For everyone who's not an engineering or science major as well, they have to take that engineering sequence that you see listed at the top during cowan first years. So everyone has to take a 3-course sequence of an engineering class if they're not an engineering or science major. For example, I was a French major. I took 3 courses in environmental engineering to fulfill that requirement. On the athletic side, we've got our NCAA sports listed here. Everything from, of course, the famous football team with the Army-Navy game coming up in December and Army playing Georgia Southern this Saturday.
Navy.
I don't know about that one, sir. I'm gonna have to go Army that. We've got our rifle team, golf, basketball. So a full complement of different NCAA sports are offered here. A lot of these teams have the advantage too of being able to walk onto them for certain positions. That's not uncommon for people who weren't recruited to still be able to show up and walk onto one of these teams that's listed here. Additionally, we've got our club sports. So these are teams that aren't NCAA, but they're still competing against other schools at the intercollegiate level, playing against either other clubs from schools or sometimes their NCAA teams with other universities. So it's teams like boxing, marathon, triathlon, fencing, powerlifting, and finally our intramural sports. So every cadet at West Point is going to be an athlete in some form. If they're not doing an NCAA or a club sport, they're going to be doing an intramural sport, playing with their company against the other companies of cadets in the Corps and competing for the brigade championship titles in these sports that are listed on the right side here. The military training journey at West Point starts with cadet basic training. So that's 6 weeks. The very first 6 weeks you arrive to West Point in late June or early July. This is coming straight from being a civilian high school student, and this is the boot camp phase where you're learning the basics of being in the military, learning how to march, how to shoot a rifle, physical training, going through obstacle courses, all of those skills. After that, going from freshman to sophomore year, we have cadet field training, 4 weeks of more advanced training, building on what you learned the summer before, more field training, more advanced marksmanship, learning how to go on patrols. And then the following 2 summers split up between those last 2 years. We have all the training listed at the bottom. Cadet leader development training, which is our culminating experience at West Point, going on platoon level operations where each cadet's going to have the experience of leading a platoon of their peers through the training areas out in the mountains by West Point to really put their leadership abilities to the final test before they graduate and commission and take charge of active duty real soldiers from there. Cadet troop leader training. All cadets are going to go to some Army base around the country, around the world, and get to shadow an active duty lieutenant at one of those bases to see what the job of really being an officer is like that they've been training for, and to get some time getting in front of soldiers there to practice their leadership abilities as well. A training detail. So now you're an upperclassman, you're going back and being one of the people who's leading that cadet basic or field training, teaching the younger classes how to do those skills that you learned the previous years. And then individual advanced development and military qualification schools we're going to talk about on the next slide. So for broadening opportunities, first off, we do offer semester abroad programs. These are just a few of the countries that are available for cadets to travel to. Sometimes they go to the other service academies, the Naval and Air Force Academy. They can go to foreign service academies, let's say Germany or France's military academy, or they can go to civilian schools in other countries as well. There's a wide variety of internships, and this is a great program with these IAD, individual advanced developments. People go to the White House, congressional offices, government agencies, Wall Street banks, research labs. So these are amazing opportunities that at the time you don't realize how great the chance is to get to go to these things, and you graduate and realize that, oh, not everybody at every other college gets to intern in a congressman's office while they're an undergraduate student. Some examples of these, from my experience, I went to the US State Department one summer and was writing draft press releases for Secretary of State John Kerry when he was the head of that agency. And I also did one internship going to a French military base on the west coast of France for 3 weeks, practicing my French speaking abilities and learning how to work with our European allies and communicate in their language, which is another great opportunity. Military qualification schools, we have things like airborne and air assault are the most common, jumping out of planes, rappelling out of helicopters. I did air assault school as a cadet. We also offer schools like sapper school, combat diver, free fall parachuting. So some of those other schools are available on the basis of competitive tryouts as a cadet. Now, finally, what it takes to become a West Point cadet, what it takes to join the Long Gray Line. Our application process is a little different from what you might see at most other schools, and we're going to talk about that more. Bottom line, we're looking for excellent academic ability, leadership potential, and overall fitness from our candidates. Basic eligibility requirements. You must be a U.S. citizen between 17 and 23 when you enroll at West Point, not married, and not pregnant or having any child support obligations by law. The first steps to admission is completing the candidate questionnaire. This is the initial survey that opens up at the end of your junior year, beginning of senior year. All you have to do is send in your social security number, where you live, where you went to high school, activities, sports, and all of that, and then your standardized test scores you have at the time. From there, once you determine that you are a qualified applicant and can continue to receive the second step kit, which is when we expand out to kind of the more general college application stuff you're thinking of, writing essays, letters of recommendation, more forms to fill out and all of that go into the actual application that gets reviewed. So we evaluate the whole candidate, and this pie chart on the right side is how that application is evaluated. Biggest thing, 60% academic. That means your GPA and then your standardized test scores with that essay or writing section. For students who are in their freshman or sophomore years in high school, biggest thing to focus on there is the GPA, because you still have a lot of ability to influence that the first couple of years there in high school. From there, once you're in junior year, senior year actually applying, focus on the SAT and ACT, trying to retake those tests. We do super scores, so if you take the SAT 2 different times, you do better in math one time and better in verbal on the other time, we'll combine the best scores from those two to make you the most competitive you can be. 30% of the application is that leadership aspect. So that's evaluated through school official evaluations. Those are our forms for letters of recommendation, basically, and we require those from 4 different teachers. So one goes to an English teacher, one for a lab science, either physics or chemistry, one from a math teacher, and one from a PE teacher. Following that, we also have an interview with an admissions officer, either somebody who works at West Point like me, or with a field force member, a West Point graduate who volunteers and lives in your local area. And then we also have the extracurricular activities are evaluated there. I would encourage for anyone applying, don't just focus on going into a wide variety of extracurricular activities where you can fill up 2 sheets of paper with all the different clubs and sports that you participate in. Try to focus on depth instead of breadth. So if you're going to be on the track team at school, try to be the captain of the team. If you're going to be on the school newspaper or yearbook, try to be the editor of the paper. Go for student government positions, being president of a club. We want to see those leadership aspects. So it's better to be in a couple of things where you're really showing your leadership potential that you're really passionate about than being in a million different clubs that you're just putting on there to make your resume longer. And then finally, the candidate fitness assessment is 10% of the assessment. And this is a test that all cadets will take, or excuse me, all cadet candidates will take with 6 events: push-ups, sit-ups, mile run, a shuttle run, pull-ups, and a basketball throw. So while this is the smallest percentage of the application, there is a minimum passing score that everyone has to meet. We encourage you to, of course, shoot for as high as possible, but no matter how great your GPA is, you could be a student with a 4.0 GPA, perfect SATs, perfect ACT, amazing letters of recommendation. But if you can't pass that candidate fitness assessment, you're not going to be able to be offered admission at West Point. And once these things are complete, this is just what goes to us here in the admissions office that we evaluate. You also must qualify medically and receive a nomination to come to West Point as well. Medical qualification is done by the Department of Defense Medical Exam Review Board. It's this long acronym. We all call it just DODMERB. You're in your area, you'll be sent to a doctor who has a contract with the Department of Defense to give you a physical, no cost to the candidate or their family. And these results go to this medical review board, and pretty much from there, they tell us here working at West Point whether the candidate was medically qualified or not. If a candidate's not qualified off the bat, that's not the end of the world. If you're disqualified, we still offer waivers depending on the condition and how competitive the applicant is. If it's somebody we really want to make it into the class, then there's waivers that are available as well. So don't give up just because you might have some kind of health condition at some point or that you weren't qualified on the first go. And finally, acquiring a nomination. Every candidate who comes to West Point has to be nominated by some source to attend. Outside of anything else in the application, you have to have a nomination, even if you've completed the rest of the application. On the left side, we have a few that are listed, which are service-connected nominations. These go to people who are children of career military members, children of veterans who are 100% disabled, or children of deceased veterans, enlisted members of the military, and candidates who are in their ROTC or junior ROTC programs in their schools. These are a few of the nominations that are offered, but the bulk of them go to the congressional nominations category on the right. So every member of Congress can nominate up to 10 candidates for West Point every year. And those members who can nominate candidates are your congressional representative in your House of Representatives district, the 2 senators from that state, and the vice president's office. And we encourage every candidate should apply for all 4 of those: the congressman, both senators, and the vice president's office. Even if you're applying for service-connected nominations, you should apply for all 4 of those just to have the most opportunities possible, and they're open to everybody. Each congressional office has their own nomination requirements. It depends on who the congressman is that year, what their staff is looking for, but generally you can expect that it'll be things like writing essays, asking for test scores and transcripts, letters of recommendation, and generally some interview process goes along with it as well. To find out more about the actual congressional nomination process, you can go to house.gov or senate.gov and look up your members of Congress, or just search for their name and go to their website in Google. Somewhere on the website, there's usually going to be a drop down that says either student services or constituent services, and that will list out for that individual member of Congress what they're looking for in their application and when their application window opens and closes. Usually they take applications in the summer and early fall between junior and senior year of high school. Last thing is on the application strategy. Be proactive, complete things early. The earlier you get completed, the earlier you can get looked at for admission, and the more chances you have if there was a medical issue that needs to be, get a waiver for it. Retaking the candidate fitness assessment if you don't pass it the first time. The earlier you can get this stuff done, the more time you have to correct those things. And every year we have a couple of people who miss their chance to get in because their medical qualification, they didn't start going to their appointments until the springtime, and they didn't get qualified in time to make it into the class. If they just done it earlier, they would have been able to come that year. Apply to all the available nomination sources, train for and take that CFA, practice for it. The events are all listed up online, exactly how to measure them and be assessed on them. So practice for that and try to give your best showing when you take your final one. Study and prepare for the SAT and ACT. Keep seeking opportunities to demonstrate your leadership abilities, and get in touch with your local field force volunteers, the West Point graduates in your area. They're there to interview, administer the CFA, and just give advice in general on the application process. Be someone to advocate for the candidate. The application deadline is January 31st each year, and the medical qualification deadline is April 15th. We also offer summer leaders experience. This is really targeted towards current juniors in high school. So it's a week-long program in June every year. We're still on track to have it in some form this upcoming summer as well, where candidates will go through some classes, military training, physical fitness, some sports, just a week to really get a sense of what it's like to be at West Point and get immersed in the environment here. It's a great way to try to find out if West Point really is the right place for you to attend as a student, and get a sense of whether you can deal with the military lifestyle and something that interests you, in addition to visiting and seeing classes during the school year. So this application will open up during January for juniors, runs from January to March, and applicants have to have their standardized test scores in order to be considered for summer leaders experience. These are the final questions for a candidate applying to West Point to ask themselves. Are they a leader? Do they want to be a leader in what they do in life? Are you mentally tough, physically fit, and ready for this challenge? Because it's going to be challenging. No matter who comes in here, I've got a wide variety of people who come in and are #1 in their class, valedictorians in high school, captain of the football team, all that, and everyone's going to have something that challenges them and they struggle with. And that's part of the deal, being ready to take on that challenge and have the grit for it. And are you interested in a career being in the Army, whether that's doing 5 years or doing 30 years? Are you interested in being there to lead America's sons and daughters in the United States Army as an officer? Stay connected with us. We have our West Point Admissions social media channels, so Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all West Point Admissions. That's my email address there, alexander.porter@westpoint.edu. So anyone who's watching this, if you have any questions about anything, want to talk to somebody one-on-one, I'm here to do that. I'm happy to answer any questions. Send me an email and we'll set up a time to talk. And then westpoint.edu/admissions is our main website. That concludes the formal portion of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing the slides now, and I'm just going to open it up to everyone who's here to hear what questions you have, what I can answer for you, what you want to hear more about.
Well, if no one's going to go, I have a number of them.
Go ahead.
I'm somewhat familiar, obviously, but I do have some. First and foremost, is not related. I see your recording, and I try to record locally. Is there a way that I can get a copy of this sent to me, the copy of the recording? That's one thing.
I believe, yes, the organized. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yes. Thank you, Lieutenant Porter. Yeah, we'll have the recording will be available within WheresMyDocs within the application itself. And so you can create an account and actually view the recording. And so on, if you have students or others who are interested in viewing the recording, they can go ahead and create accounts within WheresMyDocs.
Okay. And by the way, I'm Colonel Glasgow, retired. I'm a JLTC instructor, and that's why I'm on here.
Okay.
Now, just to let you know, and Rangers lead the way, but Marines then some. I did attend Ranger course in '84, just to let you know. I enjoyed it. Okay. Counterparts. Are you in contact with your counterparts? Because I want to see if they have something similar to what you just did, so I could have it from the Air Force and the Navy.
I'm not sure if what their process is for doing these. I know they have their own admissions websites with points of contact, but I don't really directly work with their admissions officers.
Okay. All right. Next, the ACT and SAT minimums generally that you're looking for. I know that you could probably,
Yeah.
generally, what are you looking for?
So we're usually for the ACT, we're going to want to be in the mid to high 20s into the low 30s. Really, like mid 20s is a solid area to be applying for and be reasonably competitive. For the SAT, being in the around 600 is kind of the ballpark number, I would say, for a median score around 600. As well, we also have the prep school, so numbers for students who are interested in prep school. ACTs, if you're trying to be in the 20s, is probably a good spot for prep school, just being in the 20s at all, and then being in the 5s or getting you into the ballpark of being looked at for prep school at least.
Okay. And actually, the prep thing was what I was going to ask about that. And I was sure you did, but I just wanted to confirm. So you answered that one. Then the last question I have, it's actually two questions on the same topic. For the SLE, is that a rolling admission, or do you review once all the applications come in and then go down and select from there? You see, is it like
for SLE, we'll usually do at once in March after all the applications are received. We'll go through them then. Might differ this year because we've changed up kind of how the application process has worked because of COVID and everything for the regular application process. So that we'll see once January comes around if it ends up being rolling or not for that. But generally, just in that window, and then they'll be reviewed in the end.
Okay, and the last question, definitely. How many do you generally take for SLE?
For SLE, usually we have 200 or 300 people come in for it each year.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lieutenant. And who this will defend in Semper Fidelis.
My brother's a Marine Corps officer, so I know all about being around Marines growing up.
That.
Okay, I'm looking over on the side. I see a question about how can students meeting academic criteria but are located in towns and cities not heavily being admitted get noticed. So that's really not a disadvantage being in an area that hasn't sent a lot of people to West Point. Honestly, if anything, it's a little bit of an advantage when you're applying for your congressional nominations. If that congressman doesn't get a whole lot of people applying, it's better to be in a district that has a few people than one that has some of the districts around Washington, D.C., where a bunch of general and colonels kids are going to school will have way more applicants than they can ever admit. So it's really not a problem being in a town or city that hasn't sent a lot of people to West Point. Best way to get noticed, I'd say, is just to get in touch with your field force. Try to make sure they have your name early on, and you can just look up Google West Point Field Force. They have a website. You can find the people in your area, but that's really the best way to be noticed early on before you're actually applying. Just to get in touch with the field force and try to build up a rapport with them. So West Point's highly competitive. What are retention strategies used by West Point? Yeah, so it is competitive being a cadet at West Point. In terms of retention, first off, I'd say that just numbers so that you know them. Usually we come in with 1,200 cadets any given year, and the graduating class ends up being about 1,000 or slightly under 1,000. So that's about 200 people from each class at West Point who leave, whether it's from academic issues and just not being able to make it through the curriculum, or they just decide that they don't want to remain at West Point. Retention strategies especially for minority students, that's something that we have seen that there's issues with getting qualified minority applicants into West Point and keeping them motivated and staying through. So there's a variety of clubs that are available for each minority groups to really get to have peers there and have a support network. The biggest thing for retention also is that we have additional instruction. And, you know, the way I said that our instructors are really accessible, they are really accessible to the point where instructors will be answering their phone in the middle of the night. They'll come back after work to help cadets out with their homework, staying late in the office, having cadets come over, you know, after lunch and sitting down to just go through homework with them. All the professors, because they care about wanting to see successful Army officers, because a lot of them are Army officers too, and because they really get to know their students in the small classrooms, want to see their students succeed. So the biggest things for you know, just being able to make it through, or when you're struggling, reach out to the professors, get in touch with them, because they're dying to help you through here. That's something that honestly, I wish that I had done more when I was a cadet. If I had, you know, set aside that pride and been willing to ask for help more, I could have probably gotten some better grades and a little less headaches along the way if I had been willing to ask for help. Is summer leadership only for high school juniors? My son wanted to go last summer, it was canceled. So summer leaders experience is only for high school juniors. So the one upcoming this year will only be for current juniors in high school. If he is, let's see, yeah, if he's just graduating from high school, he wouldn't be able to go to SLE, because he'd be getting ready to come in for our day and start up at West Point during that time. So it really is only for juniors. Seniors at that point are mostly concerned with getting their stuff together to come and start their basic training.
Lieutenant Porter?
Yep.
Yeah, tell me about the demographic makeup of the student body there.
Yeah, so let me, before I tell you, I'm just going to pull up the exact numbers here for you, so I don't have to try to remember them off the top of my head. So our demographics from the class of 2024, we had 20%, or our numbers for women was 23% female in the class, which is a big increase from what it was when I was a cadet. It was more like 16 or 17%, so that's been going up. Our African Americans were 17.2% of the class, Hispanics 11% of the class, Asian 9.5%, and Native Americans are about 1% of the class each year. Also, another demographic there to know, recruited athletes 21%, and prior service soldiers are about 7% each year.
What about your faculty and staff?
I do not have the exact numbers for the staff breakdown there. There's an ongoing program at West Point right now that's has addressed the fact that we don't have, you know, proportionate to the cadet population, though it's not proportionate with the amount of minority officers who are actually teaching at West Point. So there's an ongoing project right now where they're trying to recruit more officers to come back to West Point to increase the diversity in all of the academic departments right now.
Lieutenant Porter, if I could just interject, for Colonel Glasgow, you asked about the Naval Academy, and we do have a presentation a couple of weeks ago from the Naval Academy. That's also within Where's My Docs. So,
Roger that. Thank you very much, sir.
no problem.
See what type of community outreach is mandatory for West Point students. So in terms of volunteering, there aren't any volunteer requirements for cadets when they're at West Point. There are opportunities where people can do that for those individual advanced development, like instead of an internship like I talked about before, where people can volunteer for those projects instead to get that that internship credit, but we don't have any mandatory volunteer service hours or anything like that. There's also community outreach events for cadets where they can participate in to go back to their schools that they went to for high school and speak about West Point there, and doing, we have leadership and STEM workshops that run in cities for low-income students who don't have a whole lot of exposure to colleges, where cadets will go there and run workshops with students in lower-income city schools to expose them as well. See, any other questions out there? Can be about anything having to do with application process, being at West Point, any questions about what the experience was like being a cadet at West Point, anything that you want to know about, I'm here.
Lieutenant Porter, how many recruiters are there other than yourself?
So there are 5. Well, my job is the diversity outreach officer. There's 5 of us, so there's 1 for each geographic region. We have the country broken down into 5 regions: Northeast, Great Lakes, Southwest, Southeast, and Far West. So there's 1 diversity outreach person for each of those regions. There's an overall regional commander for each one, and then we have an active duty soldier, a National Guard, specific recruiters as well. And if you need contact information for the outreach people in your area, if you need to know for what state you're in, I can give you their contact info.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Average wait time for an acceptance. So full acceptances usually don't come out until the springtime, because with the way that the congressional nominations work, there's some districts that are just starting to put their nominations out right now, but the bulk of them come in December and January. So then once January hits, we've got the list of everyone who's actually been nominated to come to West Point, and then throughout the springtime is usually when the official acceptances are going to start coming out.
Okay, Lieutenant Porter, very awesome presentation. Really appreciate your time. And I guess before we close out, just any last minute questions?
Thanks again for having me on here tonight. It's great getting to talk to you and getting to hear some questions too. Like I said, if you want to contact me, alexander.porter@westpoint.edu, and I've got my work cell phone on me all the time too. That number, I'll drop it in the chat. It's 845-905-6436. I'm going to drop my contact info in here one last time.